Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. This is Veronica Bozak from ILO Social Protection Department. It's my pleasure to welcome you at today's webinar. We're just giving it a few more seconds as participants are still joining the webinar. We were very enthusiastic to see how much interest this session attracted with many. I think this was the highest registration rate we had in our series so far for this workshop. So today's session, welcome again. Today's session will focus on the interaction between social protection information systems and integrated beneficiary registries. It's the 7th workshop in our series, Interoperability in Action. Can we switch to the next slide, please? So as I said, I'm Veronica Bozak. I work as social protection policy specialist at the headquarters of the International Labour Organization, and I'm also a steering group member of the Digital Convergence Initiative. It's my pleasure to moderate today's session. And can we move to the next slide to give you an overview of what we are doing today? We have a very packed agenda with really exciting and interesting speakers. We will have some context setting and global perspective to explain some of the key concepts. We will then have a live demonstration or a real demonstration of how to create interoperability between social protection management information systems and integrated beneficiary registries, followed by concrete examples from Kenya, Turkey, Chile, so from several countries, and then also from a solution provider. And we hope we'll also have enough time to open for discussions before we close. Next slide, please. Just some housekeeping rules. You can interact with us either through the chat for general comments if you want to share resources or other things. If you want to ask concrete questions to our panelists, or speakers, please use the Q&A box. That will greatly make it easier for us to be able to sort the questions and pass them on to the speakers and have them reply to. We will reply either live in the discussion or in writing in the Q&A box. So if we don't manage to address your question in the discussion, please make sure to check the Q&A box for an answer in writing. This session will be recorded, so you agree to this by participating in this webinar, and also simultaneous interpretation is available. You can select between English, French, Portuguese, or Spanish if you click the interpretation button with the little globe at the control bar, usually at the bottom of your screen. Next slide, please. A little bit of background on the Digital Convergence Initiative. It is an effort by the Universal Social Protection 2030 initiative that includes both USP 2030 members and non-members, but also governments, development partners, and actors from the private sector, focusing really on agreeing on consensus-based standards for interoperability, which is, of course, important because it enables ICT solution providers to build products that are easy to use, easier to integrate and to operate and maintain and scale. It reduces time and cost, so solutions can be developed much quicker. And it enables countries to mix and match between different components, but also between different providers that use those standards, and overall ensure the systems that are future-proof by design. Please go to the next slide. So this is, as I said, one in a series of workshops that we've organized on different interfaces where interoperability across the social protection system is important. And for each of these different elements, like the payment system, the ID system, etc., we look at sharing an understanding of process flows, data elements, and the technical APIs, so the automated programming interfaces that are required for interoperability. Creating awareness on the benefits of interoperability through the use cases, and demonstrate live interoperability using digital public goods for some use cases. And also, of course, hearing from experts, stakeholders, but also from you on the topic. Next slide, please. So previous interoperability in action workshops, if you're interested, we already had a session on interaction with the civil registration system, payment systems, identification systems, pharma registries, disability registries, and social registries. So do check our website and watch the recordings if you're interested to look at any other of these aspects. Next slide, please. On the Digital Convergence Initiative, it is this workshop series, but also others, such as you may have also followed some of our sessions in the Talking Interoperability Dialogue series. They are organized by the Steering Committee of the Digital Convergence Initiative, which currently consists of representations from the International Labour Organization, the World Bank, and GIZ. Next slide, please. And so today's session, next click, please, is focusing on integrated beneficiary registries. And we'll have an introduction also explaining a little bit the key concepts around integrated beneficiary registries, what's the difference between social registries, integrated beneficiary registries, etc. Next slide, please. And with this, we move to this introductory presentation, setting a little bit the context. Next slide, please. And for this, we have a top-notch expert on that area. I welcome Valentina Barca. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Veronica. So if we move to the next slide, I'm going to start just with what are we even talking about, which is always useful. I think this room of people actually is probably very familiar with the concept, but it's worth being clear just because there's sometimes confusion in the terminology and how this is used differently in different countries. And let me specify that we're focusing on functions here. So when we talk about the integrated beneficiary registry function, we're talking about the function of pulling information from a series of different programs that are playing different roles in our social protection system, and they're programs across the pillars of social protection, so across social assistance, across social insurance, across active labor market policies, and they're programs that are also functioning along the life cycle. They're addressing different risks and contingencies. And what the integrated beneficiary registry function is doing is it's pulling data from these different programs to have an overview of who the beneficiaries are of these different programs. That's why the word integrated beneficiary registry is kind of focusing on the beneficiary concept. It's very different from the social registry function. You'll notice that the arrows are flowing in the opposite direction to what we would see from a social registry function. In a social registry, you would have that gateway function of having data on potential beneficiaries of a range of different programs, and these might be different types of programs. It's social assistance, but not necessarily just poverty-targeted programs. It might be individual entitlement programs as well, possibly coming in through a single window, and Richard will be touching on this in the future. Now, as you can see, we're focusing on this function of the integrated beneficiary registries, pulling in information on beneficiaries. We're not looking at the broader interoperability with other components of the system, which we've touched in other webinars along this series. So if we move to the next slide, obviously, this role of integrated beneficiary registries is fundamental. And yet it's underappreciated and it's underinvested in many countries. Just to give you a silly example, I've recently been working on a review of the information systems in 19 countries across West and Central Africa. And of those 19 countries, only 2 are pursuing any type of integrated beneficiary registry function. And this is kind of broadly the case across global experiences that we see. So I'm very excited to actually have some fantastic examples of the countries that have been pursuing this function and which are showcasing why it's so crucial. So obviously, integrated beneficiary registries, they're a back office tool which can support social planning and financing agencies. They play a fundamental role in terms of supporting coordination across the social protection system and across those different pillars of social protection and across the range of different programs that are operating along the life cycle. They can allow us to monitor who is receiving what across different programs. They can help kind of that broader analytics and M&E function. They can support our budgeting, our planning. They're the only way in which we can get a real sense of coverage of programs, because if the data on beneficiaries is fragmented and each program has their own data, we don't know where the overlaps are, where the gaps are. And this is why integrated beneficiary registries can help us identify complementary bundles of benefits and services, identify synergies, analyze and track the supply of different programs, and also kind of zone into unintended duplications, but also gaps across these programs. So very powerful for a very powerful tool. And for program administrators more specifically, obviously it gives us this control over understanding what other benefits maybe your client, the kind of person for whom you're performing case management, is also receiving. It can help to facilitate intermediation and referrals across different programs. And for people, it can allow citizens to check their benefit status, what they're already receiving, what they might be entitled to, and support referrals as well. If we move to the next slide, obviously the way in which this integrated beneficiary registry function is de facto implemented in country varies widely, and we'll be hearing a few of those examples. They vary in terms of what data is being pulled in. Specifically here on the left-hand side of this slide, you can see some of the types of information that would typically be held by an integrated beneficiary registry, but ultimately, whatever you choose to integrate will be integrated. So kind of that depends on the setup of your system. And that interaction today that we're looking at is with these social protection MISs, the program MISs that are supporting each individual program that is being integrated. Now, of course, the value of this integration is huge. And just think of a private sector provider who's providing benefits and services to its clients. There's no way that they wouldn't be tracking who's receiving what across those and sort of looking at overlaps, gaps, duplications, etc. But very often social sector agencies don't have this capacity. Obviously, integrated beneficiary registries, they can, their function is not to support eligibility determination. That falls for a social registry. But if any rules apply in terms of if you are a recipient of this program, you're also entitled to that program, or if you receive this, then you're not entitled to that, they can support with that type of function. As we've already said, they can support this monitoring and evaluation and even near real-time verification and validation. They can support us in that better resource allocation and data-driven policy design. And overall, having integration across the program MISs of different programs can also enable integration of other functions along the delivery chain, so including the payments function, the grievance function. Just one point on the M&E is there's a paper that's going to come out quite soon with a convergence initiative called "We Have the Data, Let's Use It Better." And it's focusing on some of these sort of M&E insights that can be really useful for planning and budget allocation, etc., that very often we don't tap into sufficiently. The data is there, we're just not using it enough. So having said all of this, I'm going to hand over to the experts who have actually been designing these systems in country and kind of over to the rest of the webinar, hoping that gave you a useful initial overview. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Valentina, for that overview. Just to introduce myself, I'm Rob Worthington. I'm a business analyst working with Quantu, and it's been my pleasure to work with a number of colleagues from different countries to learn really how they have approached developing integrated beneficiary registries and to see what that shows us in terms of a potential common approach. So what I'm going to do is take you through two case studies that illustrate the approach that we're proposing. So this diagram here is showing an overview of the entire social protection delivery chain. And there are two key stages where we feel the Integrated Beneficiary Registry plays a role, where the function of the IBR plays a role. First, in the enrollment stage, and second, in the managed stage that you see there on the right. So what we're going to do in this demonstration is illustrate the data exchange between SPMIS, we'll use that abbreviation for Social Protection MIS, and the IBR, abbreviation for Integrated Beneficiary Registry, using two use cases that relate to specific steps in each of these stages, which you can see at the bottom of the screen here. So let's look at the first use case. So the example that we've taken here is a social protection scheme for people with disabilities. And in this use case, we'll focus on an individual who is proactively requesting to enroll in the scheme themselves. And we're going to look at three scenarios where SPMIS must exchange data with the IBR to facilitate this. So first, during the enrollment, to verify that the beneficiary is not already enrolled in another scheme that might make them ineligible for this scheme. And second, for SPMIS to update the IBR with details of the type of benefit provided to a beneficiary that is enrolled. And third, the scenario where SPMIS needs to update the IBR in the case where a beneficiary has exited the scheme. So let's go over the first enrollment scenario in a bit more depth. In this slide, we're going to look at the full enrollment process, including verification checks with other parts of the social protection information system. So the process starts when our fictitious person, we're calling Miss Elena, requests to enroll in the scheme, in this case using a public portal. She'll need either her unique identification number, UIN, or her disability ID to do this. SPMIS is going to receive her enrollment request via the portal, and it's going to send her a confirmation SMS or email. And it's now going to communicate via an API with 4 other systems to verify if she's eligible for the scheme before making an enrollment decision and informing Miss Elena. So this starts with a call to a disability registry using her UIN or disability ID. The disability registry is going to return a response confirming if she's registered or not. If she is, that response will include additional details, which you can see here, things like the type of disability she has, the type of functional limitation she has, the type of support services she uses, her accessibility needs, and perhaps an overall disability percentage. Second, it will make a call to the social registry, again using her UIN. If she's registered in the social registry, it will return a response with her poverty score and household ID. Third, and now where the IBR comes in, it will make a call to the IBR using either her UIN or her household ID, or it could be both if we're interested in schemes which are at the household level. If she's registered in the IBR, this will return data on a number of different schemes, all of the schemes effectively that she has been registered in, along with her current enrollment status in the scheme. So is she actively enrolled still, or has she graduated or been suspended for some other reason? Finally, it will make a call to the payment system, again using her UIN, which provides a response to confirm if her bank details are available and if they've been verified. So SPMIS has now verified data from 4 separate systems, which it can use to make an enrollment decision. In our scenario, Miss Elena is accepted and she receives an SMS from SPMIS confirming her enrollment in the scheme. So let's now turn to the second scenario. At this point, Elena is enrolled in the disability scheme and will start to receive monthly cash transfers. And again, we're going to follow the full process to see where the IBR sits within that. So the scenario starts with SPMIS generating a disbursement list. This has details of all the beneficiaries to be paid in the monthly cycle. This is transmitted via API to the payment system. The payment system will make the payments and send a response with detail of the status for each of the payments to SPMIS. The SPMIS is then going to collate a similar list to send to the IBR. This will update the IBR on which beneficiaries have received what kind of benefit from the scheme on which date. This is going to include obviously both newly enrolled beneficiaries like Elena, as well as existing beneficiaries. The data, as we see here, will include demographic data such as sex, birth date, location, socioeconomic data like the poverty score, the name and ID for the scheme providing the benefit, and the type and, if appropriate, the value of the benefit provided. The IBR will provide an acknowledgement. This process is then going to be repeated each time the scheme beneficiaries receive an additional benefit. In our scenario for this scheme, this would be monthly. So I'd now like to turn to the third scenario, which covers the case where a beneficiary exits the scheme. There may be a number of reasons why a beneficiary exits from the scheme. They could graduate from the scheme, or they may be suspended for a variety of reasons. In the scenario that we're going to consider here, our fictitious beneficiary, Miss Elena, has sadly deceased. So the process starts once the CRBS is updated with details of the death event. This initiates a deceased notification to SPMIS. It provides SPMIS with Elena's UIN, name, sex, death registration number, and death date. Based on this information, SPMIS updates Elena's status as suspended. This will prevent any further payments from being made to her. It also notifies the IBR using an API. This provides information such as Elena's UIN, household ID, and name. It includes detail of the program in which she was enrolled and the date of the last benefit that she received. Critically, her status is now included as suspended, and the date on which she was suspended is also included. This data is now available in the IBR, and hence for other SPMASs to query and verify the same status. So we've now gone over the first use case and the three scenarios, and I'd like to hand over to the Access Health team, who are going to provide a live demonstration of this use case.
Thank you, Robert. I'm Shafali Singla from Access Health team. I would now walk you through the sandbox environment and live demonstration for all the three scenarios discussed by Robert. Next slide, please. The demonstration environment has been set up in the DCI sandbox environment, incorporating the multiple systems that correspond to social protection programs, disability registry, social registry, integrated beneficiary registry, payment system, and the CRBS system to showcase the interoperability. These systems seamlessly interact with each other using APIs and data standards, ensuring the smooth communication based on the predefined parameters. Next slide. Let's now go through the live demonstration. So initially, let's take a look at Elena's records of beneficiaries program. In the Integrated Beneficiary Registry, that is IBR, she has participated in so far. In the IBR, we can see her UIN, name, and the household ID. Once we click on the UIN, we can see Elena's profile and can see that she has participated in 4 programs so far. Out of it, she is suspended from 3 programs and active in 1 program. She now wants to apply for another program, that is financial assistance to disabled person. She therefore visits the website dedicated to this program. On the website, she has the option to apply using her disability ID or unique identification number, that is UIN. So she enters her unique identification number. After entering the unique identification number, Elena is prompted to provide her consent by reviewing and accepting the terms and conditions section. So once she provides a consent, she proceeds by clicking the apply button. By doing so, the eligibility check process is initiated. In the background, the SPMI sends a request to the Disability Registry utilizing Elena's UIN to retrieve her disability-related details. So in response, the Disability Registry provides Elena's personal details as well as information related to her disabilities. So once the relevant disability-related records are found and the eligibility criteria are met, the SPMIS can proceed to next stage, which involves the poverty score validation. The SPMIS requests Elena's poverty score from Social Registry using a UIN. In response, the Social Registry provides Elena's household ID and the poverty score. Based on the poverty score, SPMIS now proceeds to the next step. As the next step, the SPMIS requests the IBR to provide the other program enrollment details of Elena in which she has participated utilizing her UIN and the household ID. The IBR in return sends the details of Elena's other programs and their enrollment status, which is the same information that was seen initially on the IBR screen. So this information is used by the SPMIS to validate Elena's eligibility for the program. If she is eligible, the SPMIS makes an API request to the payment system to check for any linked bank account using her UIN and determine if it's payable. So once all the eligibility criteria have been met, Elena is successfully enrolled and a notification is displayed. So with this, we complete the enrollment process. So now, based on the monthly payment cycle, the SPMIS generates a disbursement list for beneficiaries enrolled in this program. To demonstrate this process, we log in into the system as an admin user. Before initiating the payment, let's have a look at Elena's account. Elena currently has 250 ALL amount in a bank account. The payment has been initiated, and Elena have received both the money and a notification on her phone. Once the payment is completed, the SPMIS generates a list of beneficiaries, including their payment details. By clicking on beneficiaries UIN, you can find additional information about them, such as their personal details, program details, and the benefit they have received. So then, the admin clicks on the Export to IBR button, which exports the data to the IBR. The IBR in response sends acknowledgement to the SPMIS. So let's see the IBR screen now. Here, we can see that the Elena's profile in the IBR is now updated with Elena's new program detail and the enrollment status. Also, to check further details of Elena on this program, the admin can click on the program ID and can check her detailed information. With this, we completed the second scenario of publishing and providing the receipt of benefits to the Integrated Beneficiary Registry. So now, after some time of receiving the benefits, Miss Elena and few other beneficiaries got deceased. The CRVS then updated the data to the SPMIS with relevant information like UIN, full name, sex, death registration number, and the death date. SPMIS then makes a decision to discontinue and stop the benefits provided to Miss Elena and the other deceased beneficiaries. The SPMIS generates a list of beneficiaries whose benefits are stopped. This list includes the personal information, benefit details, as well as the enrollment status and the date of suspension. So before updating the IBR with this information, let's take a look at Elena's current status in the IBR. We can see that her enrollment status is currently active. So once the admin clicks on the Update to IBR button, the data is updated and the SPMIS receives an acknowledgement from the IBR. We can now see the IBR. that Elena's enrollment status has changed to suspended with the date of suspension. This concludes the third scenario of publishing the receipt of exited beneficiaries and completion of the first use case demonstration. Now I hand it over to Rajdeep, who would walk you through the last use case, that is proactive cash transfer for education. Over to you, Rajdeep.
Thank you for the great demo, Shifaru. We will now move on to the last use case. Let's look at the proactive cash transfer for the education. In this case, we will showcase the scenario where the IBR receives a batch request from the SPMIS for the eligibility check of a group of beneficiaries. The process starts when SPMIS for the education program makes an API call to social registry, which is integrated with the education management information system to search on child in school. If relevant to the program's eligibility check criteria, it could include the other parameters such as age, sex, and poverty score. The social registry will return a matching list of children with their UIN, age, sex, education details, along with their household ID and the parents' UINs. In cases where the social registry and the education management information system are not already integrated and sharing the data, the social registry would provide the information excluding the school and education information. Additionally, the SPMIS may need to query the EMIS separately to verify that the list of children provided by the social registry are enrolled in school. With the confirmation in hand as the next step, SPMIS will query the IBR to determine if the beneficiary is already enrolled in another program that would make the child ineligible for these programs. In this scenario, it will send a batch of UIN and household IDs for the list of children provided by the social registry. The IBR will return a response with the details on enrollment history and the status of beneficiary in other programs. The SPMIS can now make a decision based on the information provided by the social registry, EMIS, IBR. Additionally, the SPMIS will also make a final check with the payment system using the parent's UIN to verify their bank account status. Once the eligibility check is completed, the student's family can be notified on their proactive enrollment in the program. After this step, the SPMIS will provide the benefits and publish the beneficiary list to IBR in a similar way that we have seen in the previous use case. With this, we conclude the discussion on the use cases. I now hand over to Robert for the data standards, code directories, and the API discussion. Over to you, Robert.
Thank you, Rajdeep. So we've looked at 2 use cases in depth, including a demonstration. So let's finish by quickly reviewing the proposed data standard, the code directories, and the APIs. The proposed data standard includes data points on the type of benefit received by a beneficiary from a specific scheme. It includes the name, UIN, and household ID of the beneficiary, as well as the name and ID of the scheme or program in which they're registered, along with key dates such as when the beneficiary was enrolled and, if relevant, when their enrollment was suspended. It includes information on the type of benefit provided and, if appropriate, the value. Finally, it also includes the current enrollment status. The code directory for benefit types includes a number of different types of benefits, such as cash transfers, vouchers, training, social insurance, grants, and so on. 4 separate enrollment statuses are proposed. These are active, suspended, graduated, or potential. 3 API requests are defined. The first request enables SPMIS to post a search query to the IBR to query which schemes a beneficiary is or has been enrolled in. The second enables SPMIS to post batch data on a group of beneficiaries that have received a benefit from the scheme. This provides the information that we reviewed earlier in the proposed data standard. The third enables SPMS to update the IBR in cases where a beneficiary has exited the scheme and will no longer receive benefits. I'd now like to hand over to my colleague from Kenya to present his presentation.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Good afternoon, colleagues and participants. This is Shadrack from Kenya. I will present about the IBR in Kenya, the Integrated Beneficiary Registry. In Kenya, we have an Integrated Beneficiary Registry that was launched on 2016. For this presentation, I've included also the social registry that was started in 2021. So for the Integrated Beneficiary Registry, it is covering the programs, the social intervention programs that are running in Kenya. And the programs are many, some are run with systems, and those systems are interoperable, and they report back to IBR after their business process. So the IBR is not running the business process. That's running the business process of intervention, but rather is a collection of or a repository of the data after the programs have been able to run their business process. The Integrated Beneficiary in Kenya is covering a number of programs, as I will be able to explain in the next slide. For this Integrated Beneficiary, it has covered a big number of population. So far, we have 1.3 households in that Integrated Beneficiary Registry. And this registry that we are calling Integrated and the program of those that with severe disability is individual. Rather, there are other programs that are household-based. And these programs that are household-based is like a program of hunger safety net. This program benefits the household. There is a program of nutrition improvement that benefits a household as a top-up or a complementary program to those that are benefiting on initial programs that are either household-based or individual-based. This Integrated Beneficiary Registry currently draws its data from all these programs, and the program can be able to counter-check if a beneficiary is benefiting from other program, if their criteria is not to duplicate or to have double dipping, what you call double dipping, where you benefit from one or two programs. These programs that are in Integrated Beneficiary Registry, they benefit also from the social registry when they doing targeting, in that they draw data from the social registry. That's where the connection is for social registry and the Integrated Beneficiary Registry. And these beneficiaries that are in the Integrated Beneficiary Registry, their documents that they used to enroll for our program, it was verified using a government database, whereby this database is maintained outside the social protection State Department, and it is another authority that has mandate to do sort of registrations, and that is the Ministry of Interior. With that, also this integrated beneficiary register, all the beneficiaries in that register have been given a complementary program that we have for health insurance that is run by another authority in the government, that is the National Hospital Insurance Fund under the Ministry of Health. With this, how does the data move? These systems have been integrated using the APIs, and the API is able to check if a beneficiary was registered before, maybe on their own, they have sponsored themselves, or they have been sponsored by the family, and the government takes care of those that are not able to sponsor themselves. Then on this database, it is quite big enough. Now we have a database of 338 GB, and mostly this is a text database containing all that beneficiaries that are coming from different programs. We call it enhanced single registry. Why enhanced? Because it has a component of the integrated beneficiary registry for those that are benefiting from different programs. And then it has a social registry that are for the potential beneficiaries. We have collected data to store in a database that we are calling social registry for the potential beneficiaries. Next slide, please. For this slide, I will briefly explain the programs that are feeding to integrated beneficiary registry. The first program, as I've said earlier, is the Older Persons Cash Transfer Program. This is like a pension scheme for those that are not in any other pension scheme. And there is a criteria of getting them is by age. If you get to age of 70, initially it was 65, but the government made a policy decision to move the age to 75. Then there is another program that is for orphans and vulnerable children, cash transfer. And this is for the needy.
Shadrack, I'm extremely sorry to interrupt. I think your time is running very fast, and I think you had already explained the 9 programs in the previous slide. May I suggest we move to the,
Yes,
I think the
was moving to
next
the
2
next
slides,
slide.
or if you can be very quick on this one, just to make sure we stay on time.
Okay, there is the persons living with the disability. That's for those that are need 24-hour care, and the Younger Safety Net program for the areas that we call the ASO areas. Next slide, please. Then I will explain about the interoperability between the MISs that are feeding data to this integrated beneficiary registry. The data elements that are exchanged are quite huge. The geographical information, the household characteristics, and the demographics of the household. Then when transferring data, we use many standards for the security of data. And then during the exchange of this data from the programs to integrated beneficiary registry, we have the APIs called, and then the mechanism is transferring data in batch process when there is the big activity like a run of payroll. And then these are the times when there is case management, we do real-time data transfer. Next slide, please. Then what are the key challenges that we have in this? Some of the data, yes, we share data with some organizations that don't have a system whereby they are able to integrate with the social registry. What happens is that we share data with them through emails. That's where the issue of security comes in. Then another thing of challenge in Kenya is the data sharing arrangements. Yes, some organizations do ask for data to carry on a social protection interventions, but when it comes to reporting, quite a number of them are not reporting to the registry, whereas we have provided mechanisms to do the reporting. Thank you. That's the end of my presentation. Over to you, Veronica.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And without further ado, we'll move to the example of Turkey. Next slide, please. So from Turkey, we have Ercan Dansuk, Senior Social Protection Specialist from the General Directorate of Social Assistance Ministry of Family and Social Assistance Services. And we also have Ali Saib Demirus, Head of Social Assistance Applications from the General Directorate of Information Technologies at the Ministry of Family and Social Services. Welcome, and the floor is yours, please.
Okay, I will start, and please, I will tell about the integrated social assistance systems of our country, namely ISAS, and tell about two specific cases of how we provide interoperability. Firstly, I have to state that we have an integrated system which also integrates the integrated beneficiary system, integrated beneficiary registry, and also social protection system. And the unique system is named as Integrated Social Assistance System. We can go to the next slide, and I will tell a very little brief of what was happening for this Integrated Social Assistance System. You can see here that one citizen have been taking a paper from the our local social assistance bureau, and have to go around the city and find all local bureaus of other government organizations in order to prove his poverty and sign this document to say that there is no social security record, there is no ownership of car or real estate. And for now, we removed all such processes, and we have a strong integrated digital system. We can keep going on. Next slide, please. Okay. Next, I can see nothing in this slide. Okay, in this part, Mr. Ercan will tell about the general process of what is happening in our system, and then I will continue.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ali. Thank you for the GIs and all the participants. Welcome to Turkey. Yeah, I think in our system, interoperability of the ISAS system, we have two sources of the data. First one is the administrative data, and we collected this data from the different governmental institutions, 29 governmental institutions, and in these institutions we get the data from the 120 web-based services and databases. And the second source of our data from the field visit, our social workers get the data from the different by using the social inquiry form. In all districts of the Turkey is about the 2003 districts. We have the social solidarity foundations. It means the local units of the our social assistance system. And let's move, please. And we get the data from from these two sources. Then we have two testing data, administrative data, and the hybrid need testing, especially for the universal versus health insurance, and the proxy mean testing for the other data. And the third one, there is a third stage for the decisions. The board of trustee, every foundation has a board of trustee, and after the preparing reports for an applicants by using the administrative data, household visit, and also our social make our social workers make the testing for the applicants. He or she will prepare a report to send the board of trustee, and the board of trustee is made up by the officials, local officials, and the local leaders and the NGOs. They know the applicants' conditions very well because they live in the same places, same settlements, and then they decide the eligibility of the applicants. Let's move, please. Then after in our system, we have about 56 social assistance programs. According to application, board of trustees decides which assistance program goes to the which applicants, or the third part of the interoperability. We have data analysis, auditing, and beneficiary monitoring. After we get the data and we analyze and audit the data, and beneficiary monitoring, we prepare a payment list in the ministry. We collect all the eligibility report from the local institution, and we prepare our system automatically prepare the payment list of our beneficiaries. Then post office, or the partner for the payments in our system, we sent the list to the post office, and the post office sent the money to the banks, and the beneficiaries can get the money, can take the money by using the cards, by using the ATM, by going to the bank office or post office, because they have the unique identity number. They can get from the they can get their social assistance from the these sources. Yes, Mr. Ali, it's over to you.
Okay. I will tell about two specific cases of how we keep up to date our information in the integrated both IBR and SP. Please, next slide. We have many integrations. In fact, it is placed, it is named as Integrated Beneficiary Registry, but we constitute the Integrated Beneficiary Registry in our system by integrating with all these government organizations, and we maintain continuous process of updating the citizen information from other government organizations. Next slide, please. Beneficiary updates are implemented. Next slide, and complete the, especially next slide, please. And due to this complete process, and next slide, we will one more point in the slide. And this recurrent process provides us maintaining eligibility and keep benefiting from services and transfers. And some beneficiaries exit from the programs and trigger field visit for social workers and initiate the certification process. Next slide, please. I will give some concrete example. There is a identity information database in our country, and our system continuously query this information from other government or from the related government civil registration data. Detection of the death case especially is crucial for maintenance or the continuity of the program. They provide as a changing service, a changing data service. We send them a batch data and send back the changing IDs, and we after that we query the changing data from other from the civil registry. Please, next slide. You can see from here that the just changing data is queried from the civil registry database. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to keep up to date all. Sorry. Because there's about 20 million potential active beneficiaries in our system. We have to use this changing data check approach, and so we can hang on a minute, please. I'm sorry, because there is an urgent phone, and additionally, we can keep going on with next slide. In this slide, we can see that social security integration and with our integrated beneficiary registry and social protection registry system. Social security information is very crucial for many type of social aids because it's a precondition for sustaining the social aid or suspending it. We query the information about pension and salary data, and also health insurance data is a clear information for us that the citizen has an active social security record, and this results in the cut off some social aids, suspend of some social aids. And drug payment data is used from the social security institution for paying back some payments of citizen to for some type of drugs, and you pay back this fee to citizen back. And also we implement the income test for social health insurance registration system of the social security institution. We do the income result test in the field both by using the processes told by Mr. Ercan previously, and we send this information to the system of the social security institution directly. This is a good example of interoperability, I think. Next slide. I think it's the end of the slides. Okay.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much. And again, let's quickly move to the next country example from Chile. And we have with us Veronica Achá-Alvarez, Head of Social Information Analysis Department at the Ministry of Social Development and Family in Chile. Please, Veronica, go ahead.
Thank you. So if you can move all of these slides, please. I think that there are quite a few elements. Yes, thank you very much. So thanks for the invitation. First of all, I would like to highlight that in Chile, We handle on a different social registry, the Integrated Beneficiary Registry, and of course the different SPMIS platforms. Although they can interoperate and integrate information from each other, they are technically different computer systems. They are located on different organizations also. The way we'll link individuals across these platforms is through the unique identification number, which is provided to all individuals in the country from birth, at the moment of birth, and to migrant individuals upon regularizing their status in the country. Additionally, I can mention that our ministry not only integrates our own benefits, but also those managed by other public institutions. Next, please. Let's focus on benefits integration. The Integrated Beneficiary Registry is part of the Social Information Registry created in 2004. But the benefits integration started in 2011. This registry contains data from 236 programs from 33 different institutions. Nowadays, we cover information from about 18 million people, which to this day represents almost 92% of the Chilean population, or the people living in Chile. In terms of data volume, we have slightly over 1 terabyte of data stored in a large Oracle table. Our ministry's benefits are loaded into the Integrated Beneficiary Registry using ETL, while the benefits provided by other institutions are loaded by them using a web platform provided by us for this purpose. Each institution has authorized users for this purpose. Next, please. Moving to more detail, the beneficiary registry design is very simple with minimal data elements. At first, we had 11 variables recorded, but an evaluation of the real utility of them led us to reduce the number of elements to only 9. The variables recorded for all benefits are the program ID, the national ID number, the given names and surnames, the date when the benefit was given, the type of benefit, if it was in cash or in kind, the amount in case it was a cash transfer, the municipality code, and the name of the institution that delivers it. From these 9 variables, really 5 are really required. All the others can be obtained from complementary data sources that we have. However, we use these 4 variables to allow some confirmations. An example of this kind of validations is taking the unique identifying number of the person with the information provided by the civil registry. If we find an inconsistency on this data, we block the registration of that benefit. These errors are recorded, so we can make the institution and the user aware of this issue, and they can correct that information and load it again. As I mentioned, our ministry loads the information through ETLs. We use a direct connection to the database level on a monthly frequency. And the other institutions load the information using the web platform in CDS format, and the frequency depends on the processing capabilities of each institution, as well as the frequency of the benefit itself. This results in that some institutions have monthly updates, while in other cases, the updates are less frequently, also annually, for example. To provide an idea of some of the benefits that we have on this integrated registry, we include family subsidies, kindergartens and nursery rooms, old age or disability pensions, scholarships, home care housing subsidies, court sponsorship, training, many more. Next, please. Next, please, Robert. Yeah, thank you. So in terms of challenges, we change many, of course. We in the country, in terms of coverage, we have a very extensive range of benefits. To give you some idea, our ministry conducts an annual evaluation and monitoring of the entire programmatic offering funded with public resources. Last year, there were 484 social programs and 216 non-social programs evaluated. From all that offering, the Integrated Beneficiary Registry contains information on 236 programs. That means less than 50% of the entire public resources invested on this topic. Regarding data architecture and technologies, we are redesigning our data architecture to accommodate to a growing number of records. If we want to cover the 100% of all the social programs, we need a different approach. Also, we are in the country implemented digital transformation. So we are now working on new interoperability standards based on API. So we are moving to that technology and that concept, including enhanced security and privacy measures. About data sharing arrangements, we're working on strategies to raise awareness among public institutions about the importance of an integrated beneficiary registry. Also, regarding install capacities, there are still institutions that lack SPMIS to handle their social programs, and also some of them have limited availability of professionals to handle the information. So this challenges the actual feasibility of them incorporating their data into the IBR. Also, the national goals of digital transformation should enable them to narrow this gap in the coming years. We hope that. Lastly, I would reiterate thanks for the invitation, and I hope this has been useful for you. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thanks a lot, Veronica. We have now heard from 3 different country cases, and our next presentation is from a solution provider. Richard Churchill will present from Development Pathways, and he's the principal digital technology specialist. Please, Richard, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Veronica. Next slide, please. So I think I'll start by just mentioning a few key aspects related to terminology. Valentina already discussed this. I think if you do come across the term single registry, in a few examples in countries, it also tends to refer to the Integrated Beneficiary Registry. And in this particular slide, one key point to make is that different countries have different pathways in terms of implementing integrated information systems for social protection. There is a tendency that in low-income countries, you tend to have household-based targeted social assistance schemes. And as you move to middle-income countries, to upper middle-income countries, to high-income countries, there's a tendency to have that distinction being individual-based and life cycle. But overall, I think you tend to have the management information systems for what we call the SPMIS, what my colleagues have already mentioned, populating an integrated beneficiary registry, and that registry acting as effectively a platform to also link to other information systems across the social protection, across the other government registries. Next slide, please. So I think I'm going to go into two examples where we've supported governments to implement integrated beneficiary registries. The first example is Uzbekistan, a very interesting case study in Central Asia. Started putting in place an integrated beneficiary registry in 2018, predominantly starting off with non-contributory schemes, child allowance, maternity benefit, and low income, which were initially being supported through a Mahala committee. So the single registry in Uzbekistan is not just functioning as a warehouse for monitoring, but it also functions as an information system, an integrated information system that supports other functions within the social protection delivery chain for 3 schemes. By 2022, this particular platform was warehousing data and supporting other functions, eligibility, enrollment, and also payment functionality for more than, for 3 schemes, 3 main schemes, 3 complementary schemes, and had linkages to 20 government databases. So I think, so it's a very good example in terms of the capability evolution of a scheme within a very relatively short period of time, or a evolution of an information system, or an IBR within a very short period of time, and also the capacity to be able to link with multiple government databases. Next slide, please. But I think the setup between 2018 and 2022 for Uzbekistan's registry was not without challenges. The first challenge was that the design was based on a Cabinet of Ministers resolution, which was a high-level document. There was no detailed design documentation, and that presented a lot of challenges, needed a lot of consultations, engagements with government stakeholders to be able to refine and get the design concluded. But I think ultimately there was a strong political will, and that particular challenge was overcome. The other part was complexity, with multiple linkages going across 20 government databases involved a lot of meetings, a lot of coordination. In some of the literature that we've done with my colleague Valentina, we've highlighted some of these particular challenges, that it's not just a technology issue. Sometimes it requires a lot of also coordination, support, and coordination, again, which is very crucial. I think I mentioned coordination. Integration was also a crucial challenge to overcome. But luckily, the Cabinet of Ministers resolution, there was a lot of collaboration. There was a lot of strong will and commitment from the Ministry of Finance. There were also resources which were provided to ensure that all the other registries which were not digitalized were digitalized in a very relatively short period of time, which is normally very challenging in many countries to undertake. Capacity and security, there was need to put in place and train a team that was going to transition from the support and development from a private vendor to a fully government run. And I think it's great that currently the system, the platform, is fully managed by a government team. Fifth was infrastructure, whereas, for example, the data centers and all that were fully in place. There was a bit of some old infrastructure at the subnational level that needed to be modernized progressively to be able to provide support. Internet was not a major issue across most of the registration points in the country where this was being done, but the system had to be refined in a way that it could also work with very low internet, including limiting, for example, the sizes of the files that needed to be uploaded. And I think it functioned very well because in some of the instances, more than 1,500 concurrent connections were being submitted at any one given time, especially during the peak time when the registration happens before the payments, which are normally dispersed monthly. Next slide, please. So the next example comes across to Africa. Kenya example was presented earlier by Meme. So in Uganda, again, similar model to the Kenyan, where we have an integrated beneficiary registry, started a couple of years ago, launched in 2021, which currently has 5 social protection schemes automatically linked using API mechanisms. Some few schemes, NSSF and Public Service Pension Scheme, connect through using linked using provide summary data through a batch process. There is, in terms of the model for Uganda, there is a mini social registry in the northern part of the country. And this also illustrates the other schemes which are part and parcel of the social protection landscape in the country: direct income support, social insurance, social care and support, and complementary programs. The vision is to get most of the other schemes connecting to the registry, and there's ongoing engagement to have that in place. It's an ongoing work. The registry also acts as a gateway to the ID agency, the NIRA, and also there are plans to connect to the Bureau of Statistics and the Office of the Prime Minister. There's an information system there. The UBOS is mainly to provide aggregated statistics that are used to populate some monitoring statistics or enrich some monitoring statistics for the Uganda's national single registry. There are plans also to extend the social registry component in Uganda over the next few years. Next slide, please. So I think I wanted just to illustrate, I think already, that there was a strong, very good demonstration of how the program MIS or social protection MIS connects to the Integrated Beneficiary Registry. So I think here is just giving an illustration of some of the API, if you are an IT person, methods that are typically created to allow for exchange of information. One would be the one handling individual beneficiaries, and the other one would be households. And the distinction here is because in a typical social protection landscape, you would have some programs which are targeted at individuals and some which are household-based. And I think I explained earlier the typical evolution from a low-income country to a middle one to maybe even high income. So in the case for Uganda, the API standards are configurable in such a way that the programs can submit data for individual beneficiaries, household beneficiaries, or even groups. There was a request to have groups because some of the social protection programs provide benefits to groups. And then, of course, there is the typical standard method, which is used to submit payments or disbursements. There were loan elements. That's why you see, for example, disbursements and recoveries as part of the components, which is slightly unique compared to other standard SP interventions. And then, of course, there would be aspects or methods associated with the complaints, exits. The Geo Master List is meant to support standardization of the geographical administrative locations. I think when you have Integrated Beneficiary Registry and you have your program management information system, you want to ensure that the language in terms of the geography or location of the beneficiaries is standardized across all these particular systems. In the same way, I can see someone, for example, raising the unique ID as a critical ingredient for that. Next slide, please. So in Uganda, there are also challenges, coordination mechanisms so that you can get all the players, all the programs which are at different levels of implementing their schemes, setting up their management information systems. Some of them would be paper-based, some are semi-electronic, and others would be electronic to be able to collaborate. But the advantage was that there was a strong task force which was created by the Principal Secretary to be able to support coordination within the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. Data privacy and security concerns. Every integration initiative raises data privacy and security concerns. And one of the key requests that was made by some of the other parties would be to understand exactly the data protection and security mechanisms that the single registry or the Integrated Beneficiary Registry was designed with. And it required a lot of collaboration, engagement, dialogue, different parties to be able to set that out. Data sharing arrangements need to be made, to be signed off. It takes some effort. It takes a lot of coordination and engagement to get that in place. Once the registry was set up, there were issues around the data quality and standards. Different programs and their information systems were having the management information systems standardizing their data at different levels, and this needed to be resolved. And also there are some times that you have a bit of reluctance from some of the programs because they may not be very confident about the quality of their data, and that data flowing into another registry, which potentially some of it becomes publicly available, published through the dashboards. And then finally, I think the budgets, continuation of getting the budgets supported. There were multiple stakeholders that were engaged and supported the government through the journey of setting up the National Single Registry, not only which included the FCDO, WFP, and also World Bank to set up the hardware infrastructure. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard. And with this, we've come to our discussion part. Thanks a lot to all who have posted very interesting questions in the Q&A box. For those of you who have not yet done so, please make sure to use the Q&A box to ask any questions you would like to the speakers. Let me invite all speakers also to open their videos if they want, as they are answering to the questions. There were several questions around how to ensure the data in the databases are up to date and good quality. This was in particular also addressed to Veronica from Chile, but also a more general question on how can we use the IBR for updating data and information. So is anyone among the panelists available for or interested to answer this question on how to keep information up to date? Veronica, please, if you want to start.
Yes, thank you. Yes, indeed, I just talked about integrated beneficiary registry, but we have different registries, and we can combine them through the unique identifier of each person. So when we need to check consistency, we can use that information, the civil registration, the social registry, and administrative records. So combining all that information, we can determine if there is some issue with the data that was provided to us by different institutions. And also, people can see what benefits we have recorded and assigned to them. So if they see some issue with the data, they can tell us, and we can review that situation with the institution that provided the information and made amendments.
So the beneficiaries themselves also have an opportunity to provide updates to their data if there
if they see some error, any mistake. Yes.
Great, thanks a lot. Did anyone else want to come in here? Ercan?
Yeah, thank you, Valentina. Yeah, in our system, we have two sources for updating. As I said, we have administrative data. It's taken from the different institutions, and our system is automatically update all the data for every day. The first one. For the second source, the house of visit, especially we check, we control especially for the regular social assistance beneficiaries. We visit their houses at least once or twice in a year. So and also as Veronica said, beneficiaries can apply to mention about the changes, but generally automatically we check if there is any changes in beneficiaries' conditions, and also house results, and all the data and all the information about the beneficiaries is updated and is new. We don't miss any changes, almost any changes in the beneficiaries' conditions.
Excellent,
and
thank you.
also,
Yeah, sorry.
sorry. Last point, and as the several colleagues said about their capacity of the system. For example, we give the social assistance just 10% of our population, but in our system, 70% of population are registered in the system, and also we can especially in the COVID time period, we could easily reach the people at poverty risk because of the COVID-19 conditions, and we can get we could get all the data from our administrative database from different institutions without asking them. We can determine these beneficiaries in COVID time period. Okay, thank you. Over.
Thanks so much. And an immediately related question, a follow-up question to this was also, how do you handle conflicts of information across different data sets? What do you do in case of a conflict?
May I answer? Question for us?
Yes, sure. This is to all of the panelists, right? So please go ahead.
Okay. We sometimes face with such problems. One institution may change its data or data structure, and this causes some problems in our system. For example, a few years ago, the Social Security institution has changed its data due to some business processes within their system. So we had suspended about 20,000 citizens aid, and we communicated with them. And in such cases, if the number of beneficiaries that have been suspended is a great numbers, so we immediately notified. But in some spectacular cases, specific cases, we are having some difficulties to notice such problems. But in that case, we had to analyze why this has happened and why the status of the citizens has changed. This was a real problem for us, but with strong communication with other government organizations, we have solved the problem. But this is a real problem for the interoperability. The interoperability requires strong communication and coordination with corresponding government organization.
Excellent, thank you. Did anyone else want to come in on this question of data quality and data updating? If Veronica, you wanted to add something, please.
Yes, thank you. Maybe I can add something. We perform offline quality checks frequently. So if we identify any problem, we talk with the institution that is provided information that makes this inconsistency appear, and to see which is the correct data.
You also communicate with the counterpart government organization to solve the problem. Okay, this is natural process. I think everybody. Nobody in such an environment can solve all problems with themselves. We sometimes have a reflex that should we change some business rules of due to some change in other government organizations' data, but generally the solution is to cooperate with other side.
I also wanted to add a final point there.
Richard, come here.
Sorry, Veronica, yeah. So I think just to flag that the data quality management is going to be an ongoing process. It's not going to be fully resolved. I think the first thing is, if you have administrative data sources, is going to be the need to verify the data against those. It's going to be need to have very strong data validation controls within your information system. And then finally, of course, the analysis of the data all the time as part of the data use will bring out any new areas that can be addressed as part of that. So I think it's an ongoing thing that you have to manage. I think no country will say that our data is 100% accurate, but I think as long as there are very clear protocols, procedures in place to support that should be fine. Over. Thank you.
Great, thanks a lot. Then another cluster of questions was around how do you actually go about building this integrated beneficiary database? What are the important steps to follow? How do you actually go about this? And in particular, in countries where there may not be a national ID, or the national ID may have significant coverage gaps. Is there a possibility to go ahead and start building this even in the absence of a well-functioning foundational ID system? Very, very difficult question. So anyone volunteering and wanting to give some advice on how to go about building the IBR, including maybe in context without functioning ID systems.
May I contribute?
Sure, please come in.
Firstly, a common national identity number is, as everybody think, is a must. We find ourselves relatively successful at this issue, and this depended on the civil registration database, which has been being set up before the 2000s, and any other government organization that is sharing their data also depend on the same ID number for all citizens. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to successful. Some of the institutions has lately begun to use this information. They had their specific ID numbers, but then they also began to use the common national identity number. So we depend all our integrations on this ID number. Similarly, we have a address ID for all single addresses, and this is also useful for actively and rightly detecting the real addresses of citizens, because our system heavily depends on the household approach rather than family approach. When this information is provided, it is very beneficial for setting up such a system, except other than the social registry system.
Thanks a lot. Anyone else wanting to come in on this question, Richard?
Yeah, I think because the IBR effectively will warehouse the data, but also provide response to the social protection schemes. If there is no unique ID, I think there is a need to assess the context, if there is a way in which uniqueness can be created by putting together multiple variables. I think the examples which in other literature, including Brazil, with the match keys, and I think there's Philippines and some of the probability matching. I think there are few technologies that can be employed to support that. Once that has been established, let's remember that then the registry can then be populated, and it can generate a unique number. What is critical is whatever algorithm is put together should lead to a unique record set being warehoused, and also while it's communicating to the individual social protection programs for all the use cases which were described earlier by Robert and team, should also use the same mechanism. So I think whereas it's very challenging to set up IBR or any form of integrated information system for social protection without the unique ID, it's not impossible. I think it requires a bit of analysis of the context. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Richard.
If I may add
Veronica,
something, Veronica. Yes, we are facing some similar problem related to migrant people who receives health and education benefits as a human right. And in order to collect this information, as Richard mentioned, we are using more variables, as in the case of Brazil, in order to approximate to a unique identifying number. Thanks. Over.
Thanks, Veronica. Indeed. So, I mean, this possibility to assigning a unique ID number within the data system is important. I think that you're creating. And then I also think Richard referred to Brazil as a really interesting example that in the absence of a widespread national ID system, accepted, I think, many different types of proof of identity, whether it's utility bills, tax numbers, driving license, whatever, birth certificates, whatever document you may have, you can come and show and use that as an entry point for having yourself registered with the system. And then, as Richard said, through different algorithms that they run across the different databases, checking for items like birth date or name or address, they can match these data sets and still realize whether this is indeed the same beneficiary household or person. So there are workarounds if you don't have a national ID system. I mean, and clearly it is important, because those who are excluded from the national ID system are those most likely to be most in need. It is important that we do not create exclusionary effects just because of the matter of fact of not having or being registered with it. And there are also examples, I think Valentina put that in her written answer, where you can also then, if you realize certain people are not registered with the national ID authorities, the social protection system can then facilitate that registration, because obviously a national ID is important for many different public services and at many different stages. So it's, I mean, in any case, important for those who don't have a national ID to help those who are currently excluded to access those. Then maybe there are many questions that are being posted in the Q&A box now. So let's perhaps move ahead with our discussion. We've talked a lot about the ID now. The steps for, if I want to build an integrated beneficiary registry, where do I start? What do I do first? How do I go about this? I think that question we haven't really had a spoken answer to. I think Rob started answering this in writing, but did anybody want to say something around this question?
I think I'll probably give it a shot. So I think starting up, I guess it goes back to the normal process, like any other setting up any other integrated information system. Whether you're dealing with a social registry or the IBR, it will start off with getting the needs, doing the feasibility, doing the scoping, and then you then subsequently follow with the more detailed design, and then it moves into a technology development with the implementation. So it's going to be a bit of a high-level social protection need around that. There's going to be the driving objectives for social protection, typically driven by social policies in many countries, identifying the need for monitoring, the need for planning, the need for coordination. It's going to be a bit of an established institution that will be an institutional home for the IBR and all that. So I think there's going to be, it comes typically from the policy drive, and then of course becomes a technology solution. But then policymakers also need to make use of the data. Yeah, over.
If I can
Excellent,
just
thank
quickly
you. Valentina, sure,
that.
come in.
It's a silly punctualization, but it actually makes a big difference. Very often when I look at the policy intentions on paper in many countries, we say that our information system should be supporting with M&E, with planning, with budgeting, etc. But then what we're not doing is thinking through where data needs to be flowing to and from in order to enable that. So if we're just pursuing a social registry function, then we will not be able to do that properly. We will not have an overview of who is receiving what across our system. We will not have that integration across the pillars of social protection. We will not have that understanding of coverage of our social protection system, as Veronica showed us, that she's able to say 91% of my population is receiving some kind of benefit or another. So it's about, following that policy intention with the practical understanding of where does data need to be flowing to and from to do this. And an integrated beneficiary registry is one of the crucial building blocks for this.
Thanks a lot, Valentina. Indeed, this is very crucial, and it leads to another question that was asked, which is, how do I decide what data needs to be shared? Which is, I guess, always a hard balance between respecting privacy and confidentiality of information on the one hand, and on the other hand, really facilitating a smooth functioning of the system, and really, I mean, using the data to the maximum for different purposes, really. And I'm glad you brought this in, Valentina, that it's not the data can be used not just for helping with the enrollment decisions, or helping then with the management and implementation of the benefit in and of itself, but it's also really important to use the information that we have. I mean, the rich treasure trove we have there of data and information for other purposes, for case management, for monitoring and evaluation, for budget planning purposes, etc., etc. So that it is really worth building these registries, because they really can help on many different steps in the overall policy and planning and implementation phases at many different steps. I think this is really important. So anyone who wants to answer this question on how do I decide what information to share with what entities?
I can take a first go at that if no one else is coming in.
Great, Rob. Yes, please.
Yeah, I mean, I think really just to sort of echo Richard and Valentina's points, I think, you know, the policy priorities are the starting point. Implementing an IBR is a costly, complex, and time-consuming process. It should ideally be approached as something that you do in phases. And I think, you know, really honing in on what are those priority questions that you want to answer? What problems are you going to be able to solve if you can get answers to those questions is an excellent starting point. I think the questions that you prioritize are, of course, going to dictate the type of data that you need. And secondly, I think there's a question of scope here. You know, I think we've seen this from the country panelists that, you know, it is an ongoing process. Most of the countries that we've heard from are progressively adding more and more management information systems, more schemes into the IBR. So there's a question of prioritization there as well, in terms of which schemes do you start with. You know, I think it makes sense to start with the ones that you feel are going to be most valuable in terms of the types of questions that you want to ask. Now, just to sort of add into this as well, obviously this is exactly what DCI is working on. You know, we've already spoken to a number of countries. We will be following up. We'll hear more about this in a few minutes with some recommendations, so we can help, you know, make some suggestions in terms of what the obvious data points are to consider.
Excellent. Thanks, Rob. Any other inputs to this question? Richard, did you want to come in again?
Yeah, so I think Shadrack would know this. At the start of the IBR in Kenya, I think it was mainly give us essential information common across all the social protection programs, because at the time they were having different implementation targeting approaches. So not every social protection scheme was necessarily keeping standard information parameters. So at the time, it was essential information necessary to populate the IBR. But I think over time, when the social registry component came in, there was a bit of additional standard parameters Shadrack would know, which were related to the harmonized registration mechanism that was put in place. It brought in additional variables to get that. So I think it starts off with, again, objectives, policy, the needs. So I think if the social policy makers are more driven about the needs, and then it goes down there. I don't think it's going to be a major challenge if there's a lot of will and institutional support to really get the data. There might be a bit of problematic entities, departments, agencies, but those ones can be dealt with once because in any case, policies are done in a collaborative manner in many countries. In other countries, things are faster. In other countries, things become challenging, but it's an ongoing process. Over.
Excellent, thank you.
Can I add? Oh, sorry, Ercan.
Yeah, Ercan, you have your hand up as well?
Yeah, please, Valentina, go on, please.
Oh, sorry, for some reason my hand raising function has disappeared, so I'm just coming in, apologies. Just quickly to add to what Richard said, First of all, it's just a pitch, is let's remember the data minimization principle in the background from a data protection perspective. And I'm sure all of you have seen, but if you haven't, do take a look at the guidelines for data protection that were developed by the SPIAC-B Corporation Board. We can share them again in the chat. I'd share them in the Q&A, and the data minimization is one of the crucial principles there. So let's remember that in the background. And the second point is Richard rightly mentioned that process over time. At the beginning, you start with what you have, but over time you can coordinate on what it would be ideal to standardize. And that's why we're also here to discuss standardization, kind of which can really help in the data sharing and the API space. So over time, we'd have programs collecting variables in the same way, and so that kind of we can enable that interoperability. Over to you, Ercan.
Yeah. Thank you, Valentina. I think sharing the databases in the system is related. I think I think like the Richard, it's related with the policy. For example, I know the Valentina knows our system very well, social assistance system. I think our system is still based on or emphasizes the notion of the delivery of the social assistance. The main issue is now still is delivery of the social assistance. But for example, we have a project now about the impact analysis of the CCT in Turkey. It's the first research about our social assistance system. We haven't known that about how our programs have an impact on people's lives, or we don't know the impact of our social assistance program. And maybe we try to change our targets in our system. So, for example, in our system, nobody can see, no governmental bodies can see or can get any information from us. We can share some data, just the aggregate data, not the individual data. They can use some official things. So because in our system, this data, the only integrated data in Turkey. There is no such integrated data. I know some cases, especially in one of the webinar, the Belgic case is so different. They have created very, very, very developed system. It's I don't remember the term. The one page, you can see everything in one page. You can use and also their system are interactive. You can put some data by yourself, or the companies can input some data in them. This is totally different, but we are at the level of almost a little bit mature system, so sharing is still a confidential issue for us. Thank you.
Excellent.
Too long.
Thanks a lot. Shadrack, you had your hand up for a second. Did you lower again, or did you want to come in? We're Shadrack or Meme, did you want to come in? If not, we're almost running out of time for our discussion. You need to unmute if you want to speak, Meme, in case you do. Maybe we can have one last question, which I thought was quite interesting, around what else can IBRs be used for? And there was one question around, have IBRs ever been used in response for delivering emergency or shock response benefits? And there was another question around, can the IBR be used to to bundle information on different cash entitlements and then have one unique interaction with the payment system rather than each having that done separately for each program or scheme or benefit. So, I mean, I guess there are many different other use cases that we can think of for once we have this IBR in place. How can this be used? These are just two examples, but yeah, does anybody want to share their thoughts on these two or potential other use cases that the IBR can be helpful for? Richard, I think this is a new hand, or is this correct? Did you want to comment on this?
Thank you. So let me give an initial start, and then I think the people who are implementing in countries, Chile, Turkey, and Kenya could even weigh in, and other colleagues in this panel. So I'll give an example of Azerbaijan. So I think Azerbaijan is a very interesting case. I know the team from Turkey may know the model in that country, but it's an integrated information system. It's actually a one software platform for social assistance, social insurance, and labor markets. Contains 19 subsystems. It's used to, of course, deliver multiple social protection programs, but also create others, which is called proactive services. So in that particular case, for example, one subsystem is a payments subsystem for doing that. So in that particular respect, if you look at it, I guess the problem here we are struggling with is conceptualization. Because I think whatever the functions that you were describing earlier, IBR fits into the monitoring and reporting within the delivery chain for multiple social protection programs. But if you go into a context where you already have one platform that delivers everything, then it becomes a bit challenging in terms of what you call it. So in that particular case, an example like Azerbaijan, for example, you would imagine that registration function, eligibility assessment function, enrollment function, payments function, and all that is all being done for, say, multiple social protection schemes. So yes, in theory, you could actually do that. That particular aspect. Sorry, I forgot the other question, but I'll let other colleagues answer.
I think we're kind of running out of time. I don't want to eat into the time for the concluding remarks, where we have Mohammed Al-Menfi come in. Thanks so much. We will continue answering questions also in writing in the Q&A box. And with this, I want to invite Mohammed to please come in for the closing. So Mohammed is a social protection analyst at the World Bank. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Veronica. I appreciate the introduction. And again, I'm Mohammed Al-Menfi. I'm a social protection analyst at the World Bank, focusing on social protection delivery systems. And I found the session to be very insightful. I think the speakers have done a fantastic job in offering us a great level of details about how we link social integrated beneficiary registries with MISs. And maybe I would like to offer the 3 key messages that I wrote them down for my own benefit, and I thought to share them with you, and what I found them the biggest keys and that we can extract from this session. The first one is, I think, reducing the social registry bias. And I think there is a tendency always when we talk about information systems, when it comes to social protection, it's talking about social registry and inclusion and how we kind of include people into our programs. However, social protection programs do not end once the beneficiary is in the program. Actually, that's a beginning of a new phase and how we manage them throughout the cycle. And here where the MIS and Integrated Beneficiary Registry play a significant role in managing this whole phases of the delivery chain, from payment, from grievance redress mechanisms, from the data updating and operations. So I think the focus here on putting highlights on the Integrated Beneficiary Registry and MIS is crucial and very important, and equally to the other part of the social protection information system, such as social registry. So that is a very timely discussion. Another important element that I felt also important in terms of these two information systems is the exit strategy, and how always kind of to avoid whenever beneficiaries are in the program, they're not there forever. And the goal is to make sure that the programs are kind of offering them the services that they can graduate from the programs. And here, whereas Integrated Beneficiary Registry can offer us with a good bundle of benefits, such as cash plus and services, training, the two complement, and that's the other dimension of the adapting social protections on top of vertical, horizontal, but also there's the comprehensiveness they mention, where you add services and try to lift up people and graduate them out of the program. And here, the Integrated Beneficiary Registry is crucial to coordinate this process and make sure that overseeing and making sure that integrated operation and services are provided. And a second point that I thought to also very important to highlight is that the universality of social protection program. And here, what do we mean is not that everyone receives a benefit, but everyone who needs it receives benefit, right? An Integrated Beneficiary Registry can, once is connected to the MISs, can offer a platform not only for social protection programs, but for pro-poor and human capital programs such as health and education, and can be the platform that goes to in service delivery in general, not just for social protection programs. And when we talk about programs across the life cycle, from childhood to working age to elderly, and as countries move to provide a bundle of programs, I think Integrated Beneficiary Registry is becoming more and more important. And the example that we had from Chile, where there's 400 plus programs, is a key one to move toward universality in terms of social protection, and Integrated Beneficiary Registry is an important tool to use in there. And finally, I think the speakers have highlighted, rightly so, the challenges of this integration, right? And I would think about it kind of with this, a Chinese proverb is like, you cross the river by feeling the stones, right? And one of the important stones that we need to feel as we move or cross the integration river is the data protection and privacy, and how it was highlighted by all the speakers as a common challenge. And I think we are at the early stage where we have now we're developing protocols, but we're still yet to see them in practice, how they span out. And then I think that's an important consideration for countries as they move to, or as they cross the integration river. Capacity is also important. I was curious not to hear the vendor lock-in, and how, for example, vendors, when they build those systems and they kind of and the lack of government capacity to carry on for sustainability for those information systems. And I think that's also an important element for countries to consider in investing in capacity building and making sure that they have the element of sustainability to ensure that we get the benefits from those integrated beneficiary registries. These are the three key highlights that I thought are very important to end and close with. And with that, I would like to thank the speakers, organizers, and moderators for the rich discussion that we have, and the great questions that we received. Moving forward, we have a next, as a DCI, we have a next event on interoperability on November 7th, and the country to be determined. And also we have a standard committees on public review open, where we would seek your contribution on how we can provide the standards for the interoperability. And we had several work streams on a civil registry, payment system, identification, farmer registry, disability, social registry, and integrated beneficiary registry. And next slide, please. And we would like to seek your inputs, where I think we would love to hear your expertise to our work streams, and also support the process of census building and harmonization. And of course, we would like you to be an agent of DCI and spread awareness about the initiative and all these sessions that we conduct. And also, finally, trying to adapt the standards and other outputs in your projects and share feedbacks on implementations. form of participations. You can share existing materials, review outputs, or join discussion groups, and submit your draft standards to DCI census building through DCI standard committee. Next one, please. You can connect with us on several platforms, on our DAG website or Discourse, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. And next one slide, please. And with that, I would like to thank everyone and hand it over to Veronica. Thank you.
Thanks, Mohammed. I think you said it all. This was a really great session. I've very much enjoyed the lively exchange and the wealth of information and experience. And I mean, a lot of really very concrete and detailed examples from different countries and on how things can be done. This was really, really great. Thanks so much to everyone, the speakers, the country representatives, the experts, but most of you also to the audience for being very interactive through the Q&A, for posting very interesting questions and staying engaged. Thanks so much, and looking forward to seeing you at the next edition.
Thank you very much to everyone. See you
Bye,
again.
everyone.
Bye-bye.